All right, it's 4 o'clock and a day that ends in Y, so it's
football at 4.
It's football at 4. John McMullen, as we do every day, Monday through Friday. Talk some Eagles.
Not that his life wasn't busy already, but it's about to get a lot busier in a couple of days.
Just slightly. I mean, what's going on? I think some team is starting up training camp.
Yeah, and a bunch of other ones too.
That's right. All of them. So we bring in John McMullen. Follow him on Twitter at JFMcMullen. He has a couple interesting stuff out there on 97.3 ESPN. A new article today is out. The NFL has spoken and Carson Wentz is a Tier 2 QB. What? Johnny Mac. First off, how you doing, my friend?
Doing well, guys. But, Saturday and Sunday end in a Y, so it's not every day.
I know. I followed it up with Monday through Friday. I got caught up in the moment, John. What do you want from me? All right. So you just put out this article, like I mentioned, and it's titled, get it on 973ESPN.com. The NFL has spoken, and Carson Wentz is a Tier 2 quarterback. So just to give a little bit of an overview, and then I'll let you dive into it. First of all, you said put away the Madden ratings, which is great. But Mike Sando, a longtime ESPN columnist who now calls The Athletic home, I guess led this survey with 55 different coaches and execs and came out with an interesting list.
Yeah, and Mike's been doing this for years, and that's why this is the one to pay attention to, because it is coming directly from NFL people. And it's not just a guy here or there. He had 55 different coaches and executives chiming in and sort of setting up this tier of quarterbacks. So as I describe it, this is the one list that matters because it's the people that matter, not the people who want to matter. These are the guys in the industry. So these are how the quarterbacks are really looked at by people inside the organization, inside the coaching staff, inside the game. So carries a little bit more weight than me. I mean, it takes not just, everybody else, but I did my own quarterback ratings with Mike a little while ago. Very close. But nonetheless, as I said, these are the people that count, so it carries a little bit more weight.
Absolutely does. And it's interesting just to see the different tiers and what quarterbacks fall in the certain tiers. And in Tier 3, Nick Foles. So he's not that far behind Carson Wentz for this report, at least.
Yeah, I was a little surprised. That was when I was surprised because I had Nick, I think he was 18th overall. I had him early 20s. So he's a little bit higher than I would personally expect. Part of that is winning the Super Bowl and making the late run to the playoffs. But everybody kind of who was spoken to had the same concern. Is he a starter? Can he handle 16 games, or is he just a relief pitcher? Look, nobody questioned. I didn't question. I compared him to Mariano Rivera, the best closer of all time, who just went in the Baseball Hall of Fame. We all know he can close. The question is, can he play 16 games at a high level? And everybody still has concerns over that. But I think if you look at the quarterbacks behind him, it's all guys who have pretty significant issues or are very young quarterbacks, still with a lot to learn.
Nick Foles, you're posing the question, John, and it's just interesting to me because the Super Bowl win obviously changes the whole narrative of the Nick Foles story, but you just said it. Can he play 16 games? Is he a starter? Are we still really asking that question, or is the verdict out, at least in your mind?
Well, I think Jacksonville's asking it. We don't have to ask it any longer. I don't. We've never had to ask it really, unless you want to go back to Chip Kelly in that era. Yeah, I mean, I thought it was a tremendous luxury for the Eagles. While he was here in his second installment, they had the best backup quarterback in football. And now I think if you look at this team about to start camp on Thursday with first practice at noon. I think this is the deepest, most talented team Doug Peterson has ever had. But there's one asterisk on that. It's no longer at the quarterback position. So it's all eggs are in one basket. And if Carson does get hurt again, it's going to be ugly. And it wasn't ugly with Nick Foles. It was ugly at times in specific games,
different type of
specific
ugly.
quarters. Yeah. But the team's not going to go in the tank. If Carson's not out there, all due respect to Nate Sudfeld, it's not going to be pretty.
You know, when I first heard about the Tier 1 and Tier 2 and Carson falling in the Tier 2 category for this specific conversation, I said, all right, well, Tier 1 is probably all the veterans. And when you ask execs and coaches in the league, they're going to mention Tom Brady. They're going to mention Drew Brees, Phillip Rivers, Roethlisberger, even Russell Wilson. But sneaking into that Tier 1, Patrick Mahomes. And I'm not saying he doesn't deserve to be there, but I thought that was interesting that Mahomes was up there in that Tier 1. Just your thoughts on that and any other surprises on the list.
Well, the least surprising aspect is Aaron Rodgers at number 1. I think that was the 6th straight year he was put at number 1. And that's why, Jeff Mosher and I often talk about that. I don't think people realize how well respected that guy is in the league. I mean, everybody looks at him in awe, and I think that gets lost in translation at some times because people boil down wins and losses to the quarterback only and ignore the 52 other players. As far as Patrick Mahomes, I think part of it is where he is and playing under Andy Reid. People know what Andy gets out of his quarterbacks, and also he's the MVP of this league. He threw 50 touchdowns, so he's coming off a tremendous season. And I've often compared him to Steph Curry in basketball. They do things you're not supposed to do, but they do them successfully. So there's a lot of no, yes when you're watching Patrick Mahomes as a coach. Same thing with Steph Curry when he's, heaving up a 35-footer. In a different era, a coach would strangle him. It's a good shot for him. Patrick Mahomes throwing across his body, no-look passes. You're not supposed to do that. He's got such ability, such arm strength. He can do things you're not supposed to do. So there's those physical traits that kind of set him apart.
John McMullen is with us here on the Sports Bash on 97.3 ESPN, Football at 4. And, John, before we leave the topic of Carson Wentz and Tier 2, the article you wrote about, I had Jack McCaffrey on my show over the weekend. I know you know Black Jack from seeing him up at the Eagles practices and, on the beat as well. And he kind of surprised me when we got to the quarterback position. He was talking about Wentz's health and how would he be. That was the player he was looking forward to seeing the most and how he performs. He was in that camp that he thought the Eagles should have kept Nick Foles, and he thought they should have moved forward with Nick Foles. I almost fell out of my chair, John.
Wow.
I mean, so maybe other people do see that they think Carson isn't quite Tier 1 yet.
Well, yeah, I mean, there's a whole group. I'm not the only one that calls him the Folesian Society. I mean, he won the Super Bowl for a team that has never won a Lombardi trophy. You got to go back to 1960. Guy's never going to have to buy a drink in the history of the world, but as long as he's in Philadelphia. However, people kind of forget, you got to do the heavy lifting to get to the closer, and that's why I compared him to Rivera. You need 7 strong innings, even if you're going to get a 2-inning save. So somebody's got to do that, and that was Carson Wentz, who's going to be the MVP of the league. So that is – I don't want to say it's forgotten by most, because I think most people realize that, but there is a sizable minority that doesn't realize that and have forgotten that. And the reality is, if Nick Foles starts week 1 in that 2017 season, You really think the Eagles are 11-2 and have the inside track to home field advantage? And we know how important that was to play the postseason games at Lincoln Financial Field. I mean, if people believe that, bless their little hearts, it wasn't going to happen.
John McMullen with us. Hey, the other story that broke over the weekend was the news that Darren Sproles would come back, and you write about him on our website, 97.3 ESPN. Sproles signing, actions speak louder than words. Darren Sproles is a man of few words, but his quote was, "My heart is in Philly. That's where I want to end my career. That team, the city, is like a family." So your thoughts on Darren Sproles coming back? I mean, I guess you can never have enough talent, right?
Yeah, it's a little bit surprising to me this time, only because of, if you go back last year, the Eagles signed him right as the draft ended, and that's when they announced it, and it was because they weren't able to get what they wanted to get in the draft. And they said, all right, let's run it back. Let's bring Darren back again. This year they drafted Miles Sanders in the second round, and that's a high-level premium pick, and that's a guy they project to be a three-down back, not early, but certainly, hopefully by 2020, at the latest 2021. So that's a pretty significant pick, and all of a sudden they bring Darren Sproles back again. Part of that is Miles was out the entire spring with a hamstring, so he's behind the eight ball as far as learning the offense, as far as getting on the field. I think that's part of it. And then I think this team is looking at it, and that's why I said you don't listen to the words necessarily, you judge the actions. And they just paid Carson Wentz $107.9 million guaranteed. He's got the injury history, the stress fracture in the back, the ACL, the LCL, even going back to the broken ribs, go back to college, more injuries there. And all of a sudden you start to think to yourself, when you have this 6-week dead period, do we really want Miles Sanders and blitz pickup on third down, who's never done it before, for an $108 million quarterback? I think that answers your question. They want the veteran because the championship window is open.
John McMullen's with us. The Monday football hour is open too, football at 4. And so, John, first I want to say this. I do want to have you on the Pete Thompson Show at some point. I was being respectful of the fact that the Y that my show takes place on is Saturday, and that's usually your quote-unquote day off.
Plus, no days
off. Plus,
off.
the show is from 8 to 10 in the morning, so, I thought I'm going to wait a little bit until I can figure out what Johnny Mac's schedule is once they're back in camp, and then we'll try to find a way to transition in. I'm going to throw that out first and foremost. But my Twitter question Saturday, John, was Eagles training camp beginning. What player or players are you most looking forward to seeing out on the field? So I'll direct that Twitter question to our football expert, and that would be John McMullen.
Well, I just mentioned number one, and part of it is the fact that he wasn't out there in the spring, and that's Miles Sanders. I want to see him on the field. I want to see how quickly he can pick it up. You want to see, this team, this is the fourth year of the Peterson era, and this will be the fourth lead back they've had in that era. Going back to Ryan Matthews, LeGarrette Blount, Jay Ajayi, now it's going to be Jordan Howard. At some point it would be nice to not be on that carousel and settle on a three-down back. The Eagles have tried to get a three-down back. They wanted to draft Christian McCaffrey. They couldn't get up high enough. They wanted to draft Dalvin Cook. The Vikings jumped up in front of them to take him. So they've been looking at a three-down back. They want a three-down back. They have to get it at some point, I think, to make things easier. So he's one. And then I think the other high draft pick at the skill position is J.J. Arcega-Whiteside. He was out there in the spring, and he looked great. And I want to see if he's going to push for time early. This is a very talented team with Alshon Jeffrey, Deshaun Jackson, Nelson Aguilar at receiver. But, man, he's so good with contested catches, back shoulder stuff. He could be a red zone weapon pretty quickly if he continues to play well.
John, just to slightly backtrack because I want your thoughts on this topic a little further regarding Darren Sproles. Is this a good thing or a bad thing? And bad is a little extreme. I don't think you're going to say bad. But my point is he's getting older, 36. He's missed 23 of the past 37 Eagles regular season games. And we all know how much Doug Peterson loves utilizing Sproles, maybe a little too much at times. So that Miles Sanders hamstring could maybe affect things down the road. Like, what are your thoughts on the Sproles reuniting with the Eagles, and could that be negative down the road?
I don't think so. In fact, I think it gives them a little bit of a cushion. It's not a long-term thing. We keep saying that. This is the third year. We haven't necessarily expected Darren Sproles back again, and here he is. And that tells you the fact they haven't been able to fix the position. But when we talk about the talent of this team, and on paper they've gotten better running back, while I say that, that's still one of the weakest positions on the team, arguably the weakest before he got here. And that's why I say you judge actions. There's a reason the Eagles brought Darren Sproles back. And the reason is the coaching staff is not comfortable with what they have at running back. And I'll go all the way back to Nick Foles again. Why do people love Nick Foles? Because of the Super Bowl. Why do people love Corey Clement? Because of the Super Bowl. Corey Clement is not a high-level back in this league. And to expect him to be that third down back if Miles Sanders isn't ready, that's not good enough. And that's why Darren's here.
Is this the best offense on paper in Eagles history? Hot take question alert.
Is it the best of this era? Yes, unquestionably. Is it the best ever? Maybe, but some of that has to do with the change of the game. I mean, it's just easier to play offense now. I don't know if it would be best if some of the older units got to play under the current rules. So it's really hard to say that. I will say it's by far the best in this era as far as skill position talent. And it's not particularly close. And the exciting part is every piece fits as well. Like last year when they brought in Golden Tate, there was a bit of a redundancy because both he and Nelson Aguilar were slot receivers, so one had to play outside where they're not as good, they're not as comfortable. This time, everybody fits. Deshaun is the deep threat. Alshon's the intermediate guy for the back shoulder stuff, the contested catches. Nelson's the slot guy. You got two great tight ends, and at least you have a competent running back that has a history of being healthy and be able to handle significant touches in Jordan Howard.
I want to go back a couple days to a conversation you and I had off the air, John, and this was maybe Thursday of last week, and it was regarding Nelson Aguilar with a tweet. He responded to a fan's tweet, and the fan was essentially questioning / attacking, not in an aggressive way, who Nelson is training with in the offseason. And, you know, he quote tweeted it and said, "Your breakdown makes zero sense." This is Aguilar speaking. "I work out of the slot and most of my production comes from there, but I also play outside. Why wouldn't I want to learn from the best outside receiver? Do me a favor and just be a fan. Stop trying to coach, homie. You are not qualified." And the reason I bring this up is you've brought up his kind of maybe light, thin-skinned, I should say, thin-skinned, and he doesn't take criticism well. So I want your thoughts on that and how important this offseason and season is for him.
Well, it's very important because it's a contract year, and obviously no extension has been worked out, so he's going to make significant money this year, but he's working for a second contract, and obviously whether that's here or somewhere else, he wants that to be significant. Interestingly, I think that could be one of the issues because, hey, there's only one football. And Alshon Jeffrey can be put in this category as well. It's not a contract year, but people have already speculated. You drafted J.J. Arcega-Whiteside to replace Alshon Jeffrey. It's not exactly a stretch to think that. So if all of a sudden these guys aren't getting touches, because Zach Ertz got to get his touches, Jordan Howard, Dallas Goedert's got to play. Doug Peterson, that might be his most difficult job this year, keeping everybody happy on the offense, and we'll see how that shakes out. As far as, Nelson should not – look, it was a dumb tweet from the fans. I get it, but why do you care? There's a lot of fans who don't understand the game. I mean, by that logic, nobody in the history of the world can work out with Randy Moss except Jerry Rice. I mean, if you're going to use that logic. And the second part is he said he should be working out with Marvin Harrison, insinuating Marvin Harrison was just a slot receiver, which means you've never watched a Marvin Harrison game in your life, because he was not a slot receiver. He was one of the best receivers of all time. He could work in the slot. He could work anywhere. Maybe the best route runner in history. So number one, you know that. So why are you engaging? And it does. Things like that, I've had personal, and I'm in the media.
Experience.
Nelson, and I don't think Nelson should be listening to me, but he listens to everybody. And everybody's different. Some players don't give a you-know-what, and other players have rabbit ears. Nelson's got rabbit ears.
John McMullen is with us, Football with 4 here on Sports Bash at 97.3 ESPN. A couple things breaking around league-wide in the last 20 minutes or so, John, including everybody always loves, if you're an Eagles fan, you love dysfunctionality down the I-95 corridor there to the Washington Redskins. The report coming out now that Trent Williams is not going to report to camp on time for the Redskins. Just another blow to the Redskins off-the-field issues, right, John?
Yeah, I mean, he missed mini-camp, and it looks like he doesn't want to play there, and understandably why. Part of it is the dysfunction. And Trent is arguably their best player. He's their Fletcher Cox. If you want to just rate their talent, he's the best player they got. He's probably the second best left tackle in football. So that's significant. But they're going to be bad with him. They're just going to be a lot worse without him. So, yeah, I think it starts with Daniel Snyder in Washington. There is incredible dysfunction. Bruce Allen has been a terrible president/GM. It's a bad situation, and it's been bad, and Daniel Snyder doesn't seem to know how to fix it.
And that's just fine for Eagle Nation.
That's
John,
right.
John, before we let you go, so Pete and I stumbled upon this conversation.
Oh, yeah, we got to wrap up with this.
Yes. So we got a ton of listeners' engagement to the text board, probably about 25, 30 answers chiming into this question. If you had to pick one artist or band, dead or alive, to go see in person, concert, what are you seeing?
Me personally, I'm seeing, and some people would argue they're dead, they're close. It would be the Rolling Stones, but they're still going. They're still going.
They're going to be at Lincoln Financial Field tomorrow night.
Yeah, 70-plus years old. I mean, that's the best band to me in history. And, yeah, you still get an opportunity to see them.
There you go. John McMullen, Rolling Stones is his answer. And he is our answer to all of our football questions at 4 every day, Monday to Friday.
Real quick, 97% of sports writers will say Bruce Springsteen and the E Street Band. But I'm going Rolling Stone. There's a weird Springsteen love from sports writers.
That's because they both feel overworked and underpaid, I guess. Although Springsteen isn't underpaid anymore, but when he started, he represented the voice of the underpaid.
I'd love to be as underpaid as Bruce Springsteen.
Yes.
John McMullen, follow him on Twitter at JFMcMullen. Check out his new article on 97.3 ESPN ESPN.com, and be sure to check out all of his content and interviews on the 97.3 ESPN YouTube channel. John, you're the man. Thanks as always.
All right, thanks, guys. Appreciate it.